This is the Paycheck to Daycheck Reselling Podcast.
I'm Liz.
And I'm Ashley.
Together, we have been making money online collectively for over 10 years.
Our mission is to help you start, learn, and grow a reselling business and to inspire you to turn your paycheck into a daycheck.
The world is changing, and we want to help you change with it. All right, welcome back to another podcast episode of Paycheck to Daycheck. This is episode number 10, and today we're going to talk about how to list on eBay step by step, especially good for people who are beginners. And so in this episode, we really want to talk about different things that you're going to need to make a really good listing on eBay, and hopefully it will be helpful for you.
Yeah, definitely. I know that one of the things that kind of held me back in starting on eBay was the overwhelming fear, I think it might have been, or nervousness or worry that I was going to mess something up when I went to list, because Poshmark was so easy to start on. There wasn't a lot of things that you needed to fill out, and there were only so many pictures, and the title could only be so long. And eBay just seemed like writing code for a website versus listing on Poshmark. So once you listen to this episode and we go over like each different step-by-step part of the eBay listing, I think it's definitely going to help beginners. I know that there's things, even when we were writing up the notes for this episode, I was thinking like, oh, I totally forgot about this. Actually, I need to go back through and like edit some of my more recent listings so they're perfect.
Right. Yeah. I think don't be intimidated. It's going to be something that you're going to have to do. I mean, you can't sell the item unless you list the item. So it's just something that, you have to do trial and error. But if we kind of go through these and walk through, maybe it'll be a lot less intimidating. See, we started on eBay. Going off of eBay to other platforms like Mercari and Poshmark will be way easy for us, because really it's just figuring out how they do shipping, and especially with some of the cross-listing apps that are out there. It's good to start on eBay because it is the most intimidating platform, and then after you learn it and master it, then the other platforms don't seem so scary. Let's say that you want to list this Columbia hiking vintage shirt. You don't know where to start. So I think the first thing that people should do is type in those keywords into the eBay search bar. You're going to come up with all of those items that are listed. Try to put in the most specific thing, maybe size large, color green, short sleeve. Try to get as much information into the search bar. You're going to come up with all those listings. The first ones might be sponsored, meaning that somebody paid to promote them. So look for the one that is not the first sponsored. That one's going to be the first organic listing that you have. So you can see what the person's selling for, look at the other listings. And then there's an option where you can filter to all the sold items. Now, this is how I feel that it's best to list. So once I've sorted through all those sold listings by filtering the sold, I'll come up with everything that is sold in the last 90 days. And I like to do it that way because to me, if it's sold, then that means it was a good listing. The buyer was able to find the item. So then from there, I'll choose usually the first one that has sold, the last one that has sold in the last 90 days. And I'll click on that listing, and somewhere on it, and it's usually at the bottom, it's going to be sell similar. And it auto-populates all that information. It does not auto-populate the photos, but it'll have all that information. And then from there, all you need to do is make sure the title looks good, the photo, and so that's how we end up choosing it. But we want to go much more in detail as to what you should include, because that's just a summary and a quick explanation of how we actually add the listing on our eBay store. But that's just one strategy. If you were to then list an item and just list it from scratch, that's what we want to go over a little bit more in depth to show exactly step by step what is eBay looking for in all of these.
So maybe it's an item that you can't really find a good sold listing for, or something that is similar enough to use sell similar on. Like if you can, that's always a good idea to use sell similar. Like Liz said, it populates a lot of the data, and that's good for you. Less work that you have to do, but you still need to do some double checking and make sure that all the item specifics are accurate and correct in the title and this and that, whatever. But if you need to create an item from scratch, there are certain steps that you're going to want to take. So the first thing that I do when I'm searching, I actually use an incognito browser just for like data reasons. I don't want my research to affect other searches that I'm doing on eBay. So I use an incognito browser, and then you can actually use the predictive searches in the eBay search bar that come up when you're searching for that Columbia vented. What did we decide it was? A shirt, a t-shirt?
Yeah, a vintage shirt,
Yeah.
size large, green.
Perfect. Yeah. So when you start typing it in the search bar on eBay, those predictive words, those keywords are going to come up, and that's how eBay wants you to list the item. That's how these other sold items have been listed. Use that to your advantage. And when you're building your keywords out in your title, use those, like I said, to your advantage.
Yeah, so that's the first thing you have to do is decide, are you going to list the item by finding a similar item and doing sell similar, or are you going to list it just as is and create a whole new listing? Which, like Ashley said, a lot of times you might have an item where there's maybe only 2 options that have sold and none are even listed. So sometimes it's better in certain situations to just create a listing from scratch. And I highly recommend it for beginners because there's no other way to learn exactly what eBay's looking for unless you are creating one from scratch, which sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. But if you want to create one from scratch, so on the desktop, if you go up to sell, there will be a blue tab that says create a listing, and you have a choice to create a single listing, multiple listing, or from bulk inventory, which we just choose single listing. So once you do that, you're going to see it is complete blank slate. There is nothing there, no information. You have to fill everything out. The first thing you want to figure out is your title.
All right. So when you're listing an item in the title, we're going to use our Columbia vented shirt as an example here. They want the same information listed the same way pretty much every time. So you're going to start out with a brand. So in this case, that would be Columbia, what it is, which is a vented t-shirt, the size large. If you have an item that does something, you're going to put that after what it does, the style. If you can find like the style code, usually you can look it up and maybe it's like the Adirondack style vented, t-shirt. Maybe that's what it's called. Then the color, so it's green in this case, and then any other supporting details. Maybe it has buttons or cargo pockets or V-neck or something of that nature. Collared, nylon, cotton, those kinds of things.
But the more descriptive you can be, the better it is, because that's what's going to get in front of the buyer, and that's what eBay is going to look for with the algorithm. So obviously the first thing you have to do is create the title. Now there is an option for a subtitle, which is an additional $2. I have never, ever used that.
Me either.
That to me seems just, why are you paying an extra $2 when you can promote your listing down the road? And if I feel like it would just be too many keywords, because sometimes when it's called keyword stuffing. What else are you going to include? The title, they give you enough characters to where it will work. And then you do not want to capitalize, like don't capitalize new, N-E-W. I know that's pretty important. I don't think they want any capitalization.
That's right. So you can capitalize the beginning of the word, like Columbia, the capital letter C. But if you add in like new or NWT, new with tag, something like, no one searches like that, NWT. So you technically shouldn't even put that in your listing. But if you're going to put new or free shipping or whatever people put in their listings, you don't want to capitalize that, as well as no punctuation. The reason being that eBay will submit your listings to Google Shopping. They'll submit all your listings to Google Shopping. And it's not eBay that will reject them. It's Google Shopping that will reject them for these things. So whole capital words, punctuations in listing, even if it's supposed to be punctuated, don't put it, like Saint John, St. John, or girls, like apostrophe, whatever. Don't put the punctuation. It, for some reason, Google Shopping doesn't like it, and it will not allow for potential buyers to find your items. If they're starting their search on Google, it will not show up.
And emojis too. You can't use emojis like a rainbow, or even though I've sold listings, we're not saying that they won't sell. It's just they prefer that you don't include that in the title.
Right. It might sell based on an eBay potential buyer searching on eBay, but you'll never get a person who starts their shopping on Google with a Google search. You'll never get a buyer off of Google. And eBay has stated many times that a large percentage of their buyers start from a Google search, and that's how they find these listings, is from Google. There's one other thing that I wanted to mention, and it kind of goes back to like the beginning when we were talking about the title, back to St. John, ST versus the whole spelled out letter Saint, SAINT. When you do your research, your keyword research, and it goes back to that predictive search in this eBay search bar, whatever comes up in that predictive search in the eBay search bar, that's what you're going to use. So it might be ST for Saint, or it might be SAINT. You're just going to use whatever eBay recommends. Use that because that's what they're looking for.
Yeah, that's a good tip for people that are trying to figure out, do I spell something out or do I use the abbreviation? I know that can sometimes be confusing. The next step, always make sure you're going to put the category, make sure that you're putting it in the right category. I know when you're listing on mobile, it is really challenging to switch categories. So that's why I recommend, if you're beginning, go to the desktop. It's got so many more functions. It's easier for me personally. I started on desktop. Some people do the app, that's fine. But with the category, I find when I'm using the app and trying to list on my phone, it doesn't always give me the correct category. So with this Columbia shirt, like obviously it's a vented PFG, those fishing shirts, that would be in hiking and fishing, outdoors. So you would want to make sure that that shirt is under that category. On the left-hand side of eBay, I think I've used it before, trying to find specific things, but you can go through categories. So you can go sporting goods, then you can go to hiking, then you can go hiking clothing. So some people do search that way, not just in the search bar. So it just helps you be in the right category. And it tells eBay, hey, this is a hiking shirt. It's not just a regular button-up shirt, because there's thousands of those on eBay. So you need to make sure you're using the right category, so that way you're standing out and you're in the right place for the right buyer.
Yeah, for sure. And eBay has also, again, stated that the more keywords and the more item specifics that you can fill out, the better, because a lot of buyers do use those filters, those that are on like the left side of the screen on the desktop version. They use those, and it's going to help them narrow down what items they show those potential buyers if it's filled out the right way with the right information.
All right, next you have the option when you're listing to do variations. Variations are good. Let's say that we have 10 of these shirts. We've got 5 that are red, 2 that are green, 2 that are blue, and they're the same exact item, just different colors. That's what a variation is. Or maybe you have the shirt and you have small, medium, and large. I prefer it only for color. Size is kind of tricky because it's like, if I'm looking for a small shirt, why do I care if there's a medium or a large? Like I would do 3 separate listings for that. And then if I had different colors of something, like maybe we've sold like Fila flip-flops, and maybe somebody's looking for a size 10, we would create a variation listing and offer the red and the black. Therefore, they're looking for that size. Maybe they want both of them, and then we can offer volume discount, where if they buy both of them, they'll get 20% off each one. So variation, I think it really depends on what it is. But size, I don't know. I'm not a huge fan of creating a variation listing and having size.
I agree. Definitely for color, I think that's important. If I'm looking for the same item, like in my size, I think there's a better chance of me buying different colors in that same item than I am buying different sizes. Mm-hmm. Maybe it's different for people with like a lot of kids or something like that, if they're searching, the same kind of item. But I think it really depends on what the item is exactly and how that can be utilized.
All right. And then sometimes items will have a UPC. So if you do have an item, maybe it's new in box and you're listing it, put the UPC. Sometimes people that know what they're doing will scan and they'll come up with your listings because you put the UPC in. 9 times out of 10, it's probably a reseller. But some people do, take that type of information to be able to find the item that they're looking for. If it does have a UPC, put it on. Maybe it's clothing and it still has the tags. It's new with tags. Make sure to include the UPC, because sometimes people do search on
I do
eBay?
all the time, especially with like the discontinued things that I sell. I also have a few products that I really love that are discontinued. I have, like my old bottle of hairspray or whatever it is. And then I'll scan the UPC or type the UPC in, and then it, brings up those items. And hopefully other sellers have put that information in there so I can find it. It's definitely just one of those things that's just an extra little bit of information that if someone wants something bad enough, they have that information and they'll type it in to find it.
Yeah. And a lot of eBay sellers don't put the UPC. So if you put it in, and let's say somebody like Ashley is looking for that expired shampoo or sunscreen or whatever it is, and she really wants it, if you scan it and there's only 3 listings, you have a better option of getting that sale because you put the UPC in, and other sellers were lazy and didn't. If there is a UPC, you know what it is, put it in. The next you would put is the condition of the item. Always make sure you are putting in the correct condition, because if you don't, buyers will notice that and they'll return something. Let's say you put new and it was pre-owned. Don't do that. Even if the item looks new, I will never put new, because I can't guarantee that item, especially clothing, I don't know if the shirt looks brand new. There might be still like a little plastic tag or the little part where the tag was, and maybe the tag ripped off, but that's still there. I'll still list it pre-owned, and I'll just put, in really good condition. You have pre-owned items. There is a place at the top of the listing where you select pre-owned to put any flaws that are there. I always put the flaws in that area, and then also in the description, so the buyer can see it in multiple places. They're not going to miss that. The shirt has one tiny mark on the bottom. I'll take a picture of it, make sure that anything that the buyer needs to know about that item before they get it is in the listing.
Yeah, I do the same exact thing. Any single flaw where I don't buy anything with smells, so I always put like no smells. Like that's an important thing. A lot of people have like sensitivity to smells. Anything that I can think of that might be a reason for them to want to return the item, I put that there. And then, like you said, also in the description, basically what you're doing, they might not read that, but you're covering your bases. So that the information is in the listing. Just anything that you can do to cover your own butt, basically.
Yeah. I listed one of my grandma's cat figurines, and I noticed that my grandma must have glued it back together because I could see the crack around the tail. So it just sold. I just shipped it out, took really good pictures of the up close so somebody could see. Definitely was glued back together. And then I put it in where it said pre-owned, and then in the description, and made sure that the defect was very evident, because you don't want somebody getting it and being like, oh, I'm going to return it. Why did you return it? Because there was a defect. Well, it's listed here and here. It's in the photos. And then when they open up a return case, you have something to say, yes, it was described, because they're going to choose item not described, but you're just doing it to cover. And it's just good practice. Be as honest as you can. Make sure you're looking over your items. Don't just list them. I know a big thing is, how can I list faster? Sometimes, especially in the beginning, it's good to go slow. Don't try to go too fast, because that's when you might miss a defect, and it might happen. If you do and you go to ship something out and there's a defect you didn't see in the listing or put in the listing, message that buyer, tell them, have a picture of it, and then that way you're definitely saving yourself.
Listing slow and listing the right way, it's like building a muscle. And then the stronger you get at it, the better you get at it, the easier it's going to be. And then the faster you're going to get at it more efficiently. You're not going to make as many mistakes.
It's time for another What's in our Reseller Toolbox. In this segment, we share the latest tips and tools to help you build and grow your reselling business. Let's find out what tool we have for today.
Today, since we're talking about making a eBay listing, we're going to talk about using an eBay fee calculator to accurately price your items and make sure that you're going to make enough of a profit. There's a couple different things that Liz and I both use. And the first thing on a website. I do all my listing from my desktop. It's just easier for me. I'm more focused when I do it that way. So I use the website Flip. It's FLIP. They have their own listing calculator on there. It's pretty accurate. You can type in, how much you bought the item for, shipping costs, shipping fees, all different kinds of data points to make sure that you're listing it for the right amount in order to make the correct amount of profit that you want on that item. Liz, you mentioned that you use an app sometimes called eProfit.
Yeah, it's just an app that I got from the Play Store, and it has pretty much the same thing as if you're doing flipped one on the desktop. So you're going to put in the item. So what are you going to list the price at? Are you going to charge shipping and handling? So if you do, you're going to put in the shipping amount that you charge. You're going to put in what the item sold at. Let's say it sold for $25, and then you select what category it's in, how much you paid for shipping. You'll get to know this the more you do it. If it's the Columbia shirt, I know it's going to be probably about $5 or $6. So maybe for shipping, what it really cost me, I'm going to estimate $5. And then you hit calculate. It gives you all the information, what they're going to take if you promote your item at whatever percent of the final value fees. You get a discount if you have a store. So they factor in all that information. You plug it in, and then it gives you your potential profit. So that is really good for knowing what you need to price something at. Oh, and then you put in your cost of goods. So what you paid for that item. So if I paid $3.20, I'm going to put that amount because that's what I paid for the item. And then you'll really get an idea of what you would profit if you sold that item for $25.
You explained that so much better than I did. Thank you.
That's what I'm here for. Yeah, so those are just two really good tools. If you are beginning and you're listing, these are your first set of listings you're going to do, definitely use a calculator. You'll see approximately what eBay will take in fees, and that's just something to kind of jot down and look back on. And it will help you when you're going out and sourcing, because when you're looking for items to sell, if you kind of have an idea of what the profits will be, that will help you out as well. And maybe you realize, wow, with shipping this item for what I can price it at and what I can sell it for, it's not going to make me what I think it's going to make me because shipping is so high, or maybe the fees are really high, something like that. So it's just something to factor in, especially when you're creating your first listings.
Going on from the condition, the next thing we have is photos. I always add my own photos to the listing. I'm sure you guys do too. I add as many photos as I possibly can. And I heard someone say once that you want to add photos like there's no description, and write your description like there's no photos, which I think is brilliant, because sometimes people are only going to look at the photos, and sometimes they're going to gloss over them, and maybe they're more description based. That's how they make their purchasing decisions. So the more detail you can have in both, I think the better. We do like all white backgrounds. I think that's just still what eBay and Google are looking for. I think it looks the most professional. What do you guys use? The all white, right?
We do a little bit of both. I do white with the clothing and the outbuilding, and then Casey lists inside, where normally he uses our gray tile, which looks really good to me.
Nice.
But it's just for both of us to list at the same time. He'll list where I am right now, and then I'll list in the outbuilding. So we do a little mix of both. I know they prefer the white background, but one thing to also, a lot of people you'll see use stock photos. If there's a brand new item, let's say you go and you find a brand new pair of shoes, I sometimes will use a stock photo, but you have to be really careful because you're not really technically supposed to use stock photos on certain brands. I can't remember any brands off the top of my head, but I know you'll get what's called a Vero on eBay, and that's just for intellectual property. They'll send it to you, tell you to take your listing down. Do you know of any brands that?
Yeah, Gymshark is one of them off the top of my head that I can think of. It's an athletic wear like brand, sort of like Lululemon.
Okay, so you can't use the stock photos. So you have to just be really, really careful with that kind of stuff. I like to take my own photos because that's the actual item they're going to be getting. I also include measurements in all of my photos. I don't do it in the description. I usually say like see photos for measurements, but I'll do the measurements because I don't like getting messages where they're like, can I get the pit to pit or the rise? And then I have to go out to the outbuilding. I've got to find the item. I've got to turn my lights on. I've got to take photos with the measurement. So it's just much easier to just include them in the photos, and then you're adding more photos. I think eBay favors listings where they have more photos. I know I was just looking for a pair of Chacos, a brand of sandals, and there was one buyer or one seller that had them listed, one pair with 2 photos. As a buyer, that doesn't give me enough information visually of the condition of the item, regardless if it's new or not. Like, I want to see what it looks like. I want to see the bottoms. I want to see the tops. I want to see the sides. I want to see the straps. Yep. So it's really important to try to add as many photos as you can. We usually try to max them out. That's what it's there for. They have on desktop a little editor where you can brighten it up and things like that. Don't you use Photo Room?
Yeah.
Yours?
Yep, I use Photo Room. It's an app you can download. I don't think it's free anymore to be able to edit your pictures with a white background without their logo
or watermark. Yeah. I've seen the pictures on eBay with the watermark, which I think looks so bad. It's like, pay for it. It's not that much money. It's going to remove it and it's going to look so much better. Like, I don't know why sellers do that.
Guys, it's a tax write-off. Just do it. Just buy it. It'll make your life so much easier. And then you can also bulk edit too. So you can bulk edit 30 or 50, I can't remember, pictures at one time. It makes so much more sense.
Yeah, because the one that eBay has, it's not very good. They did have the one where it would remove the background, but then it would remove parts of the item, and it's like, that's not going to work. So I definitely think Photo Room, if you're going to be photographing on something that's not a white background, that's a good app to have.
In addition to, what Liz was saying, she wants to see more detail than just 2 photos. Even if you have 8 or 10 photos, whatever it is, you still need to make sure that they're quality photos. So the minimum that eBay looks for is 800 by 800 pixels. We recommend that, and eBay recommends that you take them in square mode as well. That's what's going to be best for their mobile version and the desktop version. But going back to the pixels, 1600 by 1600, if you upload pictures in that resolution, you're actually going to be able to get the zoom feature on your eBay photos, which is really nice. So if people want to see, let's say it's this Columbia vented shirt or whatever the heck we're talking about, you can zoom into the material to kind of get a better idea of what that material is going to feel like in real life. So
and that feature was important for me when I was looking for my Chacos, because the straps, I wanted to make sure the straps around the toes weren't worn down, and that the seller that I bought from did have the zoom feature. So that was actually very helpful for me as a buyer. And if you've never bought on eBay, I recommend going on and buying something. See what the buying experience is. That will really help you as the seller know what to definitely include in a listing.
Right. And it'll help your feedback too if you're selling on there. So you can get some automatic feedback and start building that up. Yeah. So next we have item specifics, which we could probably do a whole episode on.
Oh my gosh. And the fact that eBay is changing some of the item or requiring more item specifics. I looked yesterday and I think we have 784 that need to be updated. But it's hard because some of them, it's we don't know that information. But you'll see in the item specifics, a lot of it depends on what category you've selected. So let's say you did select the hiking shirt. You'll be able to, there'll be certain item specifics you'll need for that category, versus if you're selling a pair of shoes, they're going to want something different, like maybe heel height, or if it's a wide or a narrow or whatever. But those are the things that with the item specifics, try to put in as much detail as you can, because I think that's what eBay feels is missing from sellers. If it says what type of sleeve, put in the type of sleeve. If it's long sleeve, short sleeve, what the color is, the fabric. You can even sometimes put in measurements, how long the shirt is or whatever. Yeah. Definitely the size.
Some of it feels really extra when you're doing it. But again, it helps with those filters down the side. And that's how a lot of people search. The recommended or the required item specifics, rather, you want to make sure you have those all filled out. The way you know that they're all filled out is there's this like circle at the top of your item specifics center, segment on the desktop version of the listing. The more you fill out, that circle is going to turn more and more blue. So once it's like all the required ones are filled out, it'll turn like a solid blue color. It's like,
it's definitely separated from the other suggested item specifics. And on mobile, they'll actually, if you don't put in if you miss something and you go to list the item from mobile, they won't let you list it because they'll say this item specific is missing. So then you know which one you have to go up. Like sometimes I've missed like putting in the size for some reason, and they'll say size is not listed, and they'll make me go back in and do it. So that's a nice feature for the mobile if you're listing on mobile.
Yeah. One other thing that I wanted to mention quick about the item specifics, like we mentioned in the title with the St. John, issue, when you're going to put something in like the type or the color in all those drop down suggestions come up. Let's say you have something that's gray. There's two ways technically you can spell gray, Gray versus Grey. Whatever comes up in the drop down, use that. Don't type it in. Use whatever comes up in the drop down. If it's a turquoise item and turquoise isn't an option, just use blue. And then you can kind of put in your description, it's like a turquoise blue top or whatever it might be. But eBay really likes it when you use the options that they have given you.
Yeah, we could definitely do one entire episode on every single specific because they do require so much. Don't get overwhelmed. Do at least the ones that they tell you, and then anything else that you can add.
Yeah, some of them aren't going to make sense, like the theme or the character or whatever. Just do, like Liz said, the best that you can.
Yeah, or if you're listing a football jersey, they'll say what player. It's like, it's not a player, it's a team. I already put in the team. Why do I put in a player? But for some reason, like they haven't figured out when you're listing a jersey that's a team jersey versus an actual player's jersey. So, I mean, those aren't the required ones. Just make sure, you're putting in the team and just ignore the player. Because obviously you can't say it's a Peyton Manning jersey if it doesn't say Peyton Manning, because then the buyer will be like, well, I thought I was getting a Peyton Manning jersey. You'd be like, no, it's just a Colts jersey. There's nothing on the back. Don't be misleading. Don't select something just to select it. Make sure that it's going to be accurate in describing that item that you're listing.
Next up, we have the description. I think a lot of buyers don't read the description, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't fill it out. I know
it's more for your
benefit, like covering your butt. But there are some buyers, like I read the description of things. I want to know all the details. I want to know everything. And there are some people out there like me. So you want to put in, the title again. I just copy and paste the title kind of back into the description. And then I use bullet points. You don't need like some long-winded, flowery worded description with all these no,
just bullets. People like bullets better. This is size large, but it fits a little snug. See photos for measurements or something like that. Or there's like you said, with the turquoise, like that would be a good place in the description to say, yes, we selected blue. However, color is more turquoise. If you need additional photos to see the color better, let us know. Something like that. And there's ways that you can use templates. So you can fill out a template, and you'll see that with a lot of like the bigger sellers, like they'll have their return policy and their shipping and all that. And I feel like it's just information overload. Like I just want to know about that specific item.
Yeah,
I can find your shipping policy, and I don't care how you ship it. Like, as long as you get it to me, if it's free shipping, why do I care? But also I want to know the return policy, which is on the listing. So you can already see it.
I don't need to know what their individual rules are, because eBay has their own rules that are going to trump the individual's rules anyways. Some people put in like this whole, like I said, long-winded thing, and their like requirements to be able to purchase from them. Like, okay, guy, like eBay has their own rules. We're going to go with theirs. Don't use any like funky code or doodles or like the emojis with the stars or, you type art or whatever the heck it's called. Don't do that stuff. No one wants to see that stuff.
The description, though, should definitely be another opportunity to put in as many keywords as you can use, because not only does the algorithm look at the title, they're looking at what do you have in the description, where I would feel like they probably don't want all that overload of text. They want the buyer to be able to see, and like you said, use bullets, list what it is again, or I usually just leave the title in the description, and then I'll do a couple bullets, like make sure I put the size very clear of what it is, the color, the description, a good place to put any defects that it has, and that just helps with the buyer. And then they come to return something, you can say, well, I put it in the description, it's pretty clear what that is, but don't feel like you have to write paragraphs. I mean, that's not what it's there for. It's just an additional place to put more information for the buyer to make a good buying decision.
All right, let's talk about whether you're going to list your item as an auction or a fixed price listing. I don't know about you guys. I don't really do auctions. I start everything as a fixed price listing. Do you guys do the same thing?
Yeah, there's certain things that we'll do on auction. Yeah, so the Zuru, the mini brands, those surprise ones, I think they were something, the number 2, so they were like an earlier edition or whatever. Those we had bought as a lead from a lead group. They were really popular, 2 Christmases ago, and they were not selling for us, and we had them as a fixed item. And I was like, you know what? I've got 6 of them. I'm going to just run an auction on them. And that was the only successful auction we've ever had. Otherwise, a lot of stuff, I feel like it doesn't get enough watchers. They've got to be really, really rare. Like, I know people do very well on auctions with things that people are looking for, and there's not really a lot out there.
If you have items for, longer than you want to, let's say you're after 90 days, you start to like lower prices or whatever your timeline is. Do you ever move items to auctions just to like move them quickly and get them out of there and get some of your costs back?
Yeah, we'll do that. T-shirts seem to do pretty good too. Like I had a Jaeger guitar themed t-shirt. It had a couple rips, and I put that in the description, and it was very clear as day that it had a couple rips, and it still sold, and there was a couple people that bid on it. So I don't know, we don't have very much success with auctions. I'm not saying that other people don't, but I don't think people are looking for an auction for like a Columbia shirt.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, listen, that's how eBay started out. Everything was auctions. That's how my mom and dad listed when they were on eBay at the beginning. Things have changed. I think a lot of people that have been on eBay for a long time maybe feel like that's the best way to utilize eBay versus like newcomers like us in the last like 10 years. We feel like fixed price listings are the best way to utilize eBay. I think you're going to get more money, like more profit out of an item using fixed price listings just in general, for like using our example, the Columbia shirt, unless like you said, it's something rare, hard to find or whatnot.
But another thing also with the auctions that I wanted to mention is a lot of people are looking for things quick. So an auction, when you're choosing auction as a listing, you can choose whether it ends in 3, 7, 10 days. There is a fee to list at auction, but there are certain people that maybe they need that Columbia shirt right away. And why are they going to watch an auction and wait? So that's why I think also the more rare the item, I mean, people aren't needing that item right away. But the auction, you have to keep in mind, you're eliminating buyers who need something right away and need it shipped and want to know that they bought it, versus an auction, you're bidding on it with other people. I know Whatnot's really big right now, but that's just a different type of auction than an auction on eBay. I would list an item fixed price and then try to lower the price. And like you said, if it doesn't sell, I mean, we were thinking of putting some things on auction, but some of the things we're just going to heavily discount and do it that way rather than the auction.
All right, let's talk about your duration for your listings.
We just do
good till canceled.
Yeah, good till canceled. So we just keep listing. We'll lower the prices. There's also a tip if your listing is not selling that you can end it and then sell similar from that. It keeps the photos. That's a way to freshen the listing. So you know that it didn't sell then. Maybe I'm going to list it again. By having a new listing, that is going to be up in the search a lot higher than an older listing. If it's not selling, eBay is like, well, nobody wants this item. I'm just going to push it back in the searches. Maybe it's not on page 1 anymore. It's going to be on page 5.
Right. When you do that, like end and sell similar thing, I recommend that you change something around a little bit, maybe edit your title a little bit, add new pictures if you have time, just change something, lower the price by like 5 cents if you can, fiddle around with it a little bit, and then, publish the new listing. When a listing is new, like Liz said, that's the best opportunity that listing has at that time to sell. And when you get an offer on that listing, that's, the next best time that it'll sell. It's like the highest that it will be in that search algorithm.
So next you would select the price. Now you can set the price whatever you want. We highly recommend look to see what other items are selling for and what they've sold by using that filter, the sold filter, like we mentioned earlier. You can also have the option to put best offer. I do best offer on every single item, unless it's something where I'm like, no, there's no way I'm going to take a lower price. You're going to get lowball offers. You can set it to like a minimum price. So if somebody lowballs you, it automatically declines it and you don't even know. And I've had buyers get mad because they'll be like, why are you declining my item? And I'll explain, well, because you are offering lower than what we have it set. Like we have it set for $20 or above, and you're offering $9, $10, $11. We're not accepting that offer. I'm sorry. So you can set that to protect you from getting somebody where you list something for 50 and they offer you $5. When you have best offer, it does give people the feeling that they're getting a better deal. It's just like running a sale. Like they feel like they're getting some sort of dollar or percentage off your item.
Yeah, I use best offer as well on everything. If I know that there's something, like you said, that I don't want to sell it for less than, like, let's say $100, then I'll list it slightly above that to leave room for offers. I used to do like the minimum offer amount, and then I decided to take it off of my listings, because when someone, even if they send a lowball offer, that's still giving it like a slight bump when you respond, you counter offer any activity on that listing. eBay's going to say, oh, like this is a popular listing. Like, look, these offers are coming in. There's activity going on here, back and forth, counter offers, back and forth. So they're going to bump that item up in the search. And what I found is even when people send me lowball offers on stuff, maybe I go back and forth with them a couple of times, and then all of a sudden someone swoops in and then they buy it for like full price, and that's like the best feeling ever. If you are able to, if you have the time, it depends on how many listings and what else you have going on in your life. But if you have time to make those counter offers back and forth on the listings, it's just another little thing that's going to bump that one, that listing up in the search slightly. Then
the next thing, when you are listing, you need to put the quantity. I wanted to touch a little bit on that because I've learned a valuable lesson with this. Well, we have Izod pants. Well, Izod shorts. They're size 32. Our friend Ken was at Costco one day and there was a bunch of Hang 10 shirts and these Izod shorts that were heavily discounted. I think they were like maybe $3.20 a piece. So he got them all. We've pretty much sold out of the shirts, but we still have these Izod shorts. Somebody come buy them, please. They're blue. They're size 32. But we had at one point in time like 30 pairs. I think we're down to maybe around 10. Let's say we started with 30 as the quantity. That's how many we have of that item. Listed them. I ended it, chose sell similar, relisted the item, and the quantity went back to the original quantity. So when you are choosing quantity, you have to be really careful and aware that anytime you end that listing and relist it, whether it's sell similar or relist, it's going to relist at the original quantity. So that's just one thing to keep in mind.
I've also made that mistake.
Yeah.
Not fun.
No.
Have you ever used a private listing?
I looked and we don't have that checked. So I'm not 100% sure why if they wanted all the buyers to be private, why would they even offer them not to be? Or you know what I mean? Or why is that option to not check the box?
Yeah, I'm not really sure. I think there's some people out there that just don't want other people knowing what they're purchasing, which, okay, cool, privacy and whatever. But it's going to take a lot of like super stalking to figure out who someone is based on their username. I never use it. I've never had anyone ask me to like switch a listing over to that. If they did, I probably would. I don't know, but I don't use it. So, unless you have a reason to use it, you can kind of just like ignore it, basically.
Yeah. Have you ever chose the make a donation? That's like the next part that they want you to select when you're listing. They want you to donate to a certain charity. I've never done it. I've never had an item that I would maybe want to. Maybe if I had like a Susan G. Komen item, maybe I would choose to donate to them. Like, do you know what the benefit is of choosing a charity?
I think it just, a percentage of the, sold price is going to go to that charity, and it makes people feel good knowing that their purchase supports that charity.
All right. So after the donation part, you have the option to collect sales tax. We are not CPAs. We are not, experts in whether you should, whether you shouldn't. I think a lot of it depends on what state you're in. So whatever state you're in, that would be a really good question for your CPA or bookkeeper, somebody that can answer whether you should be checking this box and collecting sales tax. I know eBay does it on your behalf. So you'll see it if somebody buys something, you will see the sales tax that they charge them. But for this, I would definitely check with your bookkeeper or CPA.
All right, let's move on to shipping. I think some people have questions about shipping on eBay. It seems so intimidating, especially when you first start out. But once you get the hang of it, it really is not. First thing that you need to decide is if you're going to charge for shipping on this item that you're listing or offer free shipping on the listing. So with free shipping, again, you do get a little bump in the search algorithm. People are so used to getting free shipping on Amazon, and now other retailers like Walmart and Target are jumping on the free shipping bandwagon just to stay competitive. I don't know about you, but all of my listings on eBay, I offer free shipping on, especially when you're first starting. I think it's the easiest way to learn how to use the shipping on eBay instead of needing to weigh your items when you list them and figure out what box you're going to put them in. I was definitely not that organized. I'm still not that organized, but now I know, first class is under £1. So I know how much that's going to cost roughly. Anything over that, you kind of get an idea once you start doing it. And I used, like Pirate Ship to kind of get an idea what it would cost to ship this item from New York to California, which is like the furthest away. And then I knew like how much more money I needed to build into my listed price for that item. So let's say it was going to cost about, $10 to ship this item. I would add an extra $10 to the listed price and then click the free shipping thing. And when it's sold, if it was less than $10, I made a little bit of money on it. Like, it all evens out in the end. Sometimes it's a little bit more, sometimes it's a little bit less. But personally, I do free shipping on everything. I know a lot of people do paid shipping, but you're just going to have to test it out and see what works best for you. But if you're concerned about shipping and starting on eBay, just do free shipping, add a little extra into the price of your item, and go from there.
So you'll have to pick, in that shipping area, you have to pick a payment policy, which we have business policies set up. So I'm not 100% what it would look like for a new beginner. But the payment policy we have for everyone is the eBay payments, which I think is very common. Before you could do like PayPal, or there was other options, but now I think it's just eBay payments.
eBay managed payments, I think.
eBay managed payments. Now your shipping policy you can choose. And like Ashley was saying, she does free shipping, which means the Columbia shirt, for an example, she might have it $30 plus free shipping instead of doing $25 plus $5 first class shipping. So really it depends on the item. You can do what's called calculated shipping, and that's where you're weighing and measuring everything, putting those dimensions in, and then you will select the service. So the biggest thing to think of when you're selecting this is, how are you going to ship the item? Are you going to ship it first class via the postal service, priority via the postal service, parcel select? Are you going to use UPS, FedEx? Those are things that you have to think about. We're going to do another episode entirely on shipping to help you guys out, because we don't have enough time in this episode. There's a lot more that goes into shipping, but when you're creating the listing, you do have to choose how you're going to ship that item.
Let's talk about handling time. This is going to go into your shipping policy as well when you create them. We recommend, the fastest handling time that you can offer to people. Maybe you can't get yourself to the post office every day or do pickups every day or whatever the case might be. Offer 2-day handling time, whatever the fastest is that you can handle in your business, offer that. The faster you can get it out to people, the better. That's just something that people are going to notice when they are comparing which item to purchase. Maybe Liz and I are selling the same exact item. It's the same exact price, but I have my vacation shipping policy on that's like 10 days and hers is 1-day handling time. Mine's 10-day handling time. Well, all things considered, you're probably going to buy it from Liz because you're going to get it much faster.
And also something to think about when you're putting in your handling time, which we always do 1 day. So if today is Thursday, if somebody buys it today, I have the end of the next business day, because that would be 1 business day. So I would have to ship it out by Friday at midnight. If you have 2-day handling and it's Thursday, then you wouldn't have to ship it out till Monday by midnight, because that would be the second business day. So that's just something to think about when you're doing that. I change the handling time a lot. I mean, that's just something you can set for right now. I highly recommend 1-2 days, no more, because otherwise people just don't want to wait forever for their item. If we ever go on vacation, I don't put it on vacation. I actually change the handling time. And then I message the buyer, hey, we're out of town. We did set a longer handling time. This is when we'll ship your item. And 9 times out of 10, people are perfectly fine with it. They don't want to cancel, but then sometimes they'll be like, oh, that's too long to wait. I'll cancel it. But I like to do the handling time because if people see you're on vacation, it kind of deters them from buying stuff while you're away. And that's actually what our friend Josh, who cannot wait to have him on a future podcast, he sells Nike sneakers. He gave us that advice because he's been selling on eBay for years, and he's just had more luck when he's away by not putting his store on vacation and just changing the handling time.
Yeah, definitely. So for global shipping or first class international, there's 2 different options that you can select when shipping things outside of the United States. Global shipping is definitely the easiest to use as a seller. So if you offer global shipping, you can choose to kind of filter through different countries and offer it to some and not offer it to others. If someone, let's say in Italy, purchases an item from you, all you're responsible for really is getting that item from wherever you are to Kentucky, the shipping center in Kentucky. And then eBay is responsible for getting it from Kentucky to their address in Italy. If anything happens between Kentucky and Italy, eBay handles it for you. They cover the cost of that and any, issues that might arise, which is really nice. It kind of takes a lot of pressure off. The downside to global shipping is that if you have buyers outside of the US that are kind of savvy as far as shipping, it's very expensive for them. And that might dissuade them from purchasing. The other option is using first class international. It's less expensive for them, but the downside is if something happens to the item in transit, then you do have to refund that buyer. Usually the issue will arise once the item enters into their country, if there is an issue, but it is less expensive and you might end up with, some more sales. Usually with the first class international, my items go to Canada, so not that far, and their shipping is like super expensive for whatever reason. So they definitely appreciate the, decrease in price.
To clarify a little bit, so the global shipping, that's something that you have to enable on your eBay selling account. It's GSP, Global Shipping Program. That's the one where you're going to ship to Kentucky. They handle the rest. All right, so once you've put in all the pricing, all that information, they're going to want you to pay to promote your listing, which is very common. They just made a change on eBay to where the minimum you could promote it was 1% of the purchase price, and now they're upping it to you have to do 2. That's the minimum. You can't do anything less than 2. They give you a suggested promoted percentage that you should put it at. We started doing 3%, but I think now we're going to possibly up it to 5% for promoted listings. We'll see if that, gives us a bump in sales. But I think 3% is pretty good. There was a lot of sellers that were upset that they're changing that and making you do at least 2%. But I think you should have at least been doing 2, 3, 4 to begin with. Otherwise, 1%, to me, it's like, why even do it? You also have the option for volume pricing. If you do have the color variations, you've got 4 different colors. Maybe you'll say if you buy 2 or more, you get 10% off. If you buy 3 or more, you get 25% off each item. I mean, you can set the volume pricing there, and it just gives people a little bit more of a discount. You don't have to do that. We know it was a lot of information for you, and this episode was a little longer than most of our episodes, but we feel like this is just a topic that is not talked about as much. And it was one where we wanted to really dive deep and help you out and go over every single part of creating a listing on eBay, because the better you can do this, then the more sales you're going to get in the end.
All right, guys, that's a wrap on today's episode. Thank you so much for listening to the Paycheck to Daycheck Reselling Podcast.
Anything we mentioned in this episode will be linked down below in the show notes or description down below.
Be sure to share this episode with anyone you think it will help, and follow us on social media at P2D Podcast.
Thanks again for listening. Keep working towards that Daycheck.